So today on our show, we have the wonderful opportunity to hear Harold Rivas, who's the CIO and CISO at Absolute Security, which is he oversees the global security and information technology, including cloud security, threat management, risk and compliance, and security operations. 2 decades of experience. We just had a wonderful, or you're going to have a wonderful opportunity to hear the conversation that we just had about AI, his take on AI, how to manage up and talk to executives. Josh, what else stood out to you? And
Oh,
what
just loved his experience with, as you'll hear, his early years at the stock exchange. I thought that was fascinating, um, to kind of hear someone's experience about that, fast pace, kind of zero downtime kind of environment, and I can only imagine the stress that he experienced and the things that he learned. You're going to hear some a great story about his experience there that I just thought was very good and really interesting.
And also, we asked him how he vetted out technology and amongst all the thousands and his ideas and thoughts that were very, very practical. So we're excited to welcome Harold onto the show and to hear his input. And we know you'll find this so valuable. Hey, Harold.
How's it going?
It's
Good. How
going
are you?
great.
Excellent, excellent. How you gentlemen doing?
We're
We're
doing
doing well.
great. Nice to meet you. So I'm Mike Linton, just by way of introduction, CEO of Valcom.
I'm Josh Linton.
Excellent.
I'm the CIO of Alcom, and we are really excited to have you on here. So,
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for making the time. We're brothers, in case the last name doesn't give it away. And
Excellent.
I don't know if you know much about Valcom. We've been in business for 42 years, and our father started it. It started as an irrigation company, and now we sell technology and cybersecurity. So it's a crazy story, but we're
I
not here
I
to
would
tell you
love to
about
hear that
Valcom.
story. I
Well,
would
it's
love to
not
hear
as
that story. That's
not,
awesome.
not as exciting as your story. We've been learning a little bit about you, and we're so excited to have you. Your experience is exactly what we want to talk to you about and the lessons you've learned along the way, and really want to really introduce you to our audience, which is executives and IT executives. And part of what Tech to Exec is helping people bridge that gap of communication, of understanding. A lot of the time, so Josh is the smart one at Valcom. He's IT and smart engineer. I'm more on the sales and business side. He comes in like, Mike, we need the cybersecurity thing. I'm like, what the? I don't.
Yeah, what's
I
that?
can I can I
Hey,
can reboot a computer with the best of them. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that.
there you go.
Anyway,
It usually fixes all the problems
Right?
anyway,
It
right?
totally does.
so we started this podcast several months ago, and really what we found out is just connecting with people like you has really helped us explain to others and given us more experience. And we just love our vendor partners. And so, anyway, we'd love to have you introduce yourself. And I know that's a broad question, but to our audience, tell us about yourself, your journey, how you got to where you're at, and some of your favorite experiences.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mike, Josh, for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity. So, a little bit about me. I am the CIO and CISO at Absolute Security. I have broad remit, a lot of different things keep me focused on the organization. I absolutely love being a CISO, a technology person at a technology company. But my entire career has really been not that. I've been in the
Mm.
financial services industry. So born and raised in New York City, naturally, you're going to have to go into financial services. That's what I did. I spent 13 years at Citigroup. Just before Citi, I actually spent a couple of years at the American Stock Exchange, which I learned
Oh.
quite a bit about mission critical systems working at the American Stock Exchange.
So were
But
you in IT there, or what was
I
your role in
was.
those? Okay, so you were
Uh,
in IT in the financial services
Yeah,
world. Okay.
exactly. I started my career in information security in the
Hmm.
early 2000s. Like we're
Oh,
talking 99. I'm like, okay, cybersecurity is a thing. I need to focus on that. With the key insight that I had early on, that was if I want to be into technology and I want to stay broad but deep, it's going to have to be touch everything, right? Not overly specialize on any single thing, but be able to really expand and cover all these things. So Citigroup afforded me that opportunity. I took on a variety of different roles. I ended up running their global vulnerability management program. So every country, every business, very complex, very sophisticated organization. Believe it or not, Citi was the first CISO. Citi hired the very first CISO ever. The first time we ever heard the term was from Citigroup back in 1995 with Steve Katz when they named him as this CISO for the organization. But 13 years there, decided to spread my wings a little bit. I spent several years at Fujitsu America, running their security business. So that was, effectively, hey, doesn't matter what business you're in, if you're an insurer, you're a bank, you're anything, we will support you, we will provide you information security services, et cetera. I hired CISOs and others, and it was a remarkable experience supporting so many different clients, and decided after a bit of doing that, these 200 clients or so think I'm their CISO. Let me go be a CISO for one company. It's going to be a lot more manageable, a lot easier to protect one company than all these different clients. So I ended up going back in and spending several years with different organizations like Mr. Cooper, a large mortgage servicer. I was at Grupo Santander or Santander, the Spanish bank. I was a CISO for that organization. I did another bout in mortgage. I went back for more at Loan Depot. I was a CISO at Loan Depot. That was a lot of fun. Helped to build that program. We took the company public. There was a lot of transformation there.
Cool.
But then, in the past couple of years, I decided cybersecurity, being an operator, taking that experience, translating it back, being able to connect with those that are creating product, to think about how the users are thinking about these things. The experience tells us, what we need, how to integrate these solutions. So that took me to Trellix. I was at Trellix for several years. Trellix was the love child of McAfee and FireEye when those companies merged. So I oversaw that program for several years, and most recently joining the organization Absolute and helping to build that program out. So really, really excited about it.
What a great range of experience. When you go back to your days at the stock exchange and when you say, I really learned a lot about mission critical services, what did you learn there? Like what stands out as like one or two lessons you would want to tell everyone that has to manage something so important?
There's two key insights I got out of the American Stock Exchange that I still live with today. And that was a long time ago. I've been doing this for 25 plus years. One, even if you don't fully understand the job you're in, understand that there is a high amount of trust an organization has put into you. Okay, so even if you're at the very beginning, maybe you're a SOC analyst, and you feel like you're above this, you can do this job in your sleep. I actually had an experience where I misstepped, I skipped a step, and I was on the second shift, right? Getting systems ready for the next day of trading. And by skipping that step, I caused hours of third shift trying to get the company ready to open the stock exchange the next day. They came this close to having to delay the start because I skipped one step because I was distracted. And that has lived with me, that experience of how critical, how focused, even though you may not fully understand why that step is so important, it can be absolutely critical. And I learned a lot about mission critical systems and how you operationalize things. The other thing I learned, right, that was a big learning. The other thing I learned is that when I decided I was going to join Citigroup from the American Stock Exchange to join Citi, I showed up differently at work. I was direct, I was open, I shared my opinions and perspectives. Because for the most part, I thought, hey, I'm moving on, leaving to this other organization, to greener pastures, if you will, at the time. That was my thought. And everyone I interacted with was like, who the hell is this? Where have you been? Why didn't you share this before? And it taught me that, you may be sitting on a good idea, but you might be too reserved, too cautious, and you're just not allowing that to come through. So be authentic. I learned early on, you really need to be authentic, be yourself, show up properly. So anyway, tons of experience, lots of years of, battles and bruises. But those are just a couple of insights from way back then.
I want to double click on that. How do you get your team to share those ideas and to share both the problems. And so we've seen a lot of time people are sitting on their ideas, and you just brought that out. They're sitting on, they don't feel comfortable, or they maybe, I don't know if they don't care enough. What have you seen as like the problems of why people aren't sharing their input and their ideas, and how you train that bad habit out of them?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you need, Mike, great question. You need to create the right kind of environment. Create an environment where people are going to be encouraged to have the conversation. And start off, understand that you may open up and say, hey, I'm open to these ideas, but maybe they're not comfortable sharing that more broadly. They don't want to be ridiculed, criticized, etc. Pull them aside and be willing to connect with the individual. Not just the ideas, but the individual. Create some safety for that person to feel like, hey, I've been kicking this around. I've been really wanting to say something. If they're safe enough and comfortable enough with you to have that conversation, you're going to see more and more of that person show up. And that's the magic you're after, right? And I've seen that time and time again. I've seen remarkable talent unlocked. Some great individuals I've had the privilege of working with, that the only thing we really needed to do was create an opportunity for them to shine, for them to just be themselves, right? And yeah, so that's another really important lesson learned, not only through my own experience, but like just in terms of developing talent, developing people, create that space for them.
That's amazing.
Love
I think something we can all take, as we talk about, what our technology leaders can learn, from other technology leaders and how they can communicate better with their executives. I think them being better leaders is just a key to the success of their organizations, right? And so, such great advice as we, from your experience, right? It's phenomenal. So tell me a little bit, I'm curious a little bit, like what prompted you to kind of make the move to Absolute? I mean, Trellix to Absolute. Kind of tell us a little bit about your desire to kind of go get with Absolute, and kind of what brought you here.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, when you join the company, you realize how often you use the word absolutely. It's always present. You're always aware of it. But I learned about the opportunity through a search firm, and started to understand the company, its history, understand its leadership, and I couldn't believe I had not heard more about this company, about who they were, how they were connected, the 30 plus OEMs that they're embedded in, the capabilities they're introducing. I can tell you, and I've shared this with so many of my colleagues and folks in financial services, so often, so many of the problem statements we had, like, hey, I have this remote office, I have this issue, I have this employee won't return the laptop. We might be even pursuing, litigation against this person, but I have no control over that asset because they need to boot into it or whatever. That firmware level control over an asset is really, I mean, absolute, right? Absolute security. We can go down to a level where if that device isn't where it's supposed to be, we can lock it and brick it. If that device has been stolen, we can brick it. If that device has been ransomware, we can restore it. We can do all kinds of things because we operate at a level nobody else can. So as I learned more about the organization and I was just like, oh my God, I mean, people need to understand this story. They need to understand what's possible. And CISOs everywhere need to understand how this can play into a critical capability that they might not even understand is possible, right? So we all think about, our endpoint detection solutions, defense in depth. We have a lot of different technologies all working in concert. But can you reach down that lower level and have that level of control over your assets? That's the part that I had no idea. And since then, just been, okay, how do I scream this out? How do I help my colleagues understand how this fits into their ecosystem? Like, where collectively we all manage globally dispersed, unless you're across the US perhaps, but even still, you might be operating in so many different places where you just can't afford the sense in a post-COVID world where it's like, oh, I can bring the device back, right? So those are some of the reasons, but the more I learned about it, the capabilities of the portfolio, we have a ZTNA capability, which I think is essential in this day and age. Organizations need that capability to connect back into enterprise apps, and it continues to extend what is possible for that operator, right? So when I talk about operators, I'm talking about those people in the trenches fighting the cybersecurity fight every single day. They have an arsenal of tools. They're trying to manage all these capabilities all together. They need to understand what's possible, and that's really why I'm here.
So it sounds like the technology brought you there and you had opportunities other places, or it could be, I mean, Trellix is a great and huge. FireEye, and you said FireEye
And
and
McAfee,
Mandiant? McAfee.
McAfee,
Oh, and then Mandiant bought some of them. Anyway,
Mandiant
uh,
went out. Yeah,
yeah, something like that. And I should know that. But when you vetted out their technology, absolutes, what do you have any methodologies of what you could teach an IT manager or an IT team on how to vet out technology? So you had to vet them out to know if this is where you want to live for the next
yeah,
X amount of years.
yeah,
You fell in love with their technology, you went that direction. That's really parallel to what our IT executives go through all day, every day. We're come and say, here's a new solution, whether it's Absolute or Trellix or all these, and they just are overwhelmed with the 3,000 cybersecurity vendors. How would you teach them? What would you share that would help them vet out from your experience how to vet out a technology?
yeah. Great question, Mike. So first and foremost, the technology and the culture of the organization, the leadership were just dynamite. It just remarkably talented people creating amazing tools was really what got me here. But to answer your question, you see, I know this problem, and I refer to it as like the CISO's own personal hell, right? Like you went and purchased best of breed technologies. You went off of the Gartner list and said, this is what I need to buy, right? It's highly recommended. And then you're managing all of that. You have, on average, about 75 different tools that any information security practitioner is running to protect an enterprise. 75 different tools. So how do I manage this thing? Is it available? Can I trust the organization behind it? How is it going to play along with the rest of the platforms that I have in my environment? Like there has been a concerted effort around the platform play and making sure that we're thinking in terms of platforms, because the administrative burden of managing all these technologies is something that we all have to keep in mind, right? So it needs to be easy to manage. It needs to be something that I'm not thinking a lot about. Is it up? Is it running? But time and time again, what I would say is this: start small. What are the definite things that are going to prove valuable to you as an enterprise? Find that key one or two use cases that you're like, if I can do this, it's worth the investment. And then pursue that holistically, like just wholeheartedly go after that thing to prove the value of the investment. Because here's what I have experienced myself. This is my own personal hell, right? We all created this portfolio of solutions. And oftentimes, the unstated truth is we've deployed about 30, 40% of it, of any one of those solutions. Why? Because we don't have the time to get the full value out of the platform we purchased. We went in there with maybe one specific thing and only that, and have failed to really consider this. So what I would say is look at this and say, what technology, how does this fit into the 75 tools that I have? Is this displacing something? Is this adding something? How do I get the maximum value, and how do I prove that value quickly? And then how does this play nicely across the rest of my capabilities, right? I would say those are top of mind issues that CISOs need to be thinking about. CISOs, CIOs, and others need to be thinking about in terms of adopting technology. You know, we could get into an AI conversation. I would argue the same thing. If you're looking at AI use cases, what is the thing that you're actually pursuing, and how do you implement that effectively in your organization? Once you have some success there, then build. But I'm a big proponent of start small and build.
That makes a lot of sense. Certainly important for us as we make recommendations to our customers. One of the worst things that can happen is that they, are not, it's not implemented fully, or they're not satisfied with the product, right? And I think that's such great advice to go down that path of really dialing in, the solution, the one kind of use case that's the most kind of critical and brings the most value, but then making sure that there's additional value you can get after, and then
Exactly.
having a plan to go down that. I think that's such great advice, for our customers. As you mentioned, AI, Tell us a little bit about what you think about AI, how it's working, what it's doing for your company. Maybe just your opinion on what you see happening for AI in the industry.
Yeah, thanks for that, Josh. I think I am certainly a believer. I have come along. I've watched technology come and go, right? And I remember some years back when cloud was a big thing, and I thought that, come on, this is just a trend. This is not going to really stick. I've seen so many things come and go. And it wasn't until one of my customers, I was at Fujitsu, one of my customers asked me for a data center hosting on a per hour basis that I had the paradigm shift. We had never priced anything against that model. And I'm having that kind of moment now. When like I think your own personal uses of technology help to dictate what the potential benefits might be in an enterprise, right? If you can kind of span out and scale out your capabilities. So I'm a big proponent. I'm playing with multiple models. I'm doing local models at home. I'm doing enterprise adoption. So we're using Copilot, we're using Claude, we're using a variety of others to unlock that value for the enterprise, because I think it is truly transformative. It can be a force multiplier for many organizations. For me personally, it is certainly helping me to digest, hey, that meeting I couldn't make it to because I was triple booked. What happened? Right? And now I'm not missing that meeting. I'm getting that context and that awareness. Better yet, I can take that context and awareness and stick it into, hey, everything that happened this week. Let's distill all of that. So Daniel Miessler, who I'm a big fan of, I think he's done some amazing work. He came out and spoke at one of our company kickoff meetings, and he said, I'm quoting him, he said, we need to think about AI as, what would you do if you had 1,000 employees working for you? Every single one of you has 1,000 employees working for you, right? And if you start to unlock the potential opportunities that might create for you, what I have found myself doing is institutionalizing, at least for myself, like every night, I'm like, what is the one question I wish I could have answered if I only had the time? And I just send that prompt either to Grok or to OpenAI or any one of them to just chew on this thing. And if it's going to go for 15 minutes, that's fine. I'm asleep. I'll wake up in the morning and it's going to give me an answer. And it's always, honestly, my experience has been it's done before I can put the phone down. But yeah, it's remarkable. So I think we all are learning how this is going to transform ourselves, our industries, our markets, our companies. And I'm thrilled as CIO for the organization. I also get to lead the charge on that front for Absolute.
How are you communicating that value to the executives? Like, because I mean, you convinced me to be a believer. We have a few unbelievers of
Yeah.
AI, and I was going to ask you how do you get people to be believers, but I think you already gave a huge idea. Pretend you had 1,000 employees working for you. Like that motivates adoption. And I
Oh,
love what you've already said. So thank you.
yeah, changed my thinking, and I love AI. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but even that, just that perspective is such a powerful perspective, right? Like I can imagine I have 1,000, but I really do have 1,000. What would I ask these 1,000 employees to do? And all of a sudden, it just opens up that mental space to be more kind of creative with your questioning. So sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt, but very powerful.
Incredibly so, incredibly so. And I think that, how do you communicate, Mike, to your question, how do you communicate that value? So I think we all look at the world through our own silo, right? Like, so if you're in a product and engineering context, you're trying to understand value through that lens, right? If you're in sales, you're trying to figure out how do I get an account summary and others. So I think it's important to meet them where they're at, right? Like, what is the use case that's going to be most impactful, where they see some true change to the way they operate? Meet them there, but then putting my technology implementer adapter hat on, I have to think about, how do I get everyone on board? How am I doing the training? We're building to the lowest common denominator, right? So I'm not building to the engineer. I'm not building to the absolute best salesperson. I'm building to the least successful salesperson and make sure that it works for all. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge. But what I would say is, if I'm considering the architecture that this enterprise will use and considering how I plumb those technologies in where it's beneficial to all. That's the current groundwork that I'm laying out for the organization. That's where I'm focused in concert with our CTO. So we can sort of lead the charge and say, okay, we know that there's magic happening. We're embracing this. We're putting the right guardrails as CISO. I'm putting the right guardrails around how data is used and protected, how privacy is respected, how all these factors are being considered, but absolutely foot on the accelerator to unlock new use cases, highlight them, talk about them across all company meetings, so that people are really getting the message that, hey, this is something we seriously believe in, and we want to promote and create some evangelism around these use cases.
I love that. What as you go back and through your career and you see these huge shifts, cloud, AI, networking, maybe, like what are some of the
Yeah.
what are some of the huge shifts? Where does AI play into that? And any experiences that really stick out to you from your career that you're like, this taught me a lesson or a principle that really sticks out to me on how I deal with these changes? Like, how do I embrace, adopt, secure through the path there?
Yeah, yeah. So Mike, I'm reminded. I think it's Kevin Kelly. I think he has a book called "What Technology Wants," and
Love Kevin
he
Kelly.
describes the concept of technology almost having its own personality, like its own motives, like almost like it's alive. You were going over the history there. Cloud. Before cloud, it was virtualization, right? We were all like mad about virtualization.
And now we're mad again
Um,
about it. Just kidding. Sorry. I'm
yeah.
sorry. I should not. I don't want to cut anything out of here. So
But virtualization was a big thing, and we then embraced it, right? I remember back in City, we called it the hardware harvest. We were going and collecting hardware so that we could virtualize all this stuff. But I do think this time is a little different. Because if you look at this on a macro level, right? So how do I get more utilization out of compute, right? So if I look at the story of virtualization, it's, I have, a couple of workloads all sitting at about, 10, 15, 20% utilization. If I can put it on one machine, I'm going to better utilize that machine. Excellent. A natural progression was we're going to then, why do I have to maintain energy, power, compute, all that stuff? I can just subscribe to it, right, through a cloud implementation. In many ways, I think AI is taking us to like, what if compute became like a thing we don't even think about anymore, right? It becomes, I'm now quoting Bill Gates' book. This was an old one. This came out in the 90s, but I still think about it from time to time. His book called Business at the Speed of Thought, right? It's a good title, but Business at the Speed of Thought. If I remember that title correctly, I believe that was it. But the idea of like compute at the speed of thought, it's like I think it, and it doesn't matter if it's going to have to spin up X amount of compute to solve some massively complicated problem. I don't even think about it anymore. And that's a new paradigm that I haven't fully grappled with, right? We know I can ask just about anything I can imagine and get something near reasonable, right? Like a pretty good answer to that question, or at least something I can refine and enhance. So this is new. Because it's new, we don't quite know what's on the other side of it. But it is a paradigm shift for sure. And the more I can remind myself of this reference of, and we will often forget, even though we can think of, hey, think about it as if I had 1,000 employees working for me. What would I do? I would ask any question I had because they have time, right? They're there, they're on payroll. Let me get them working on this. We forget. We forget the potential and the possibility that lies with that little insight. So don't yet know, but I'm heading and digging in now.
love
That's
that.
awesome.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Josh, you had something?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, we're kind of running up here on time, honestly, and before we end, would love to have maybe a last recommendation around for our IT leaders as they're communicating with their CISOs, right? And saying, hey, we need some of these things. Any kind of recommendations, tools, tricks? I guess we don't want them tricking people, but uh, tools for communicating well to maybe the non-technical executives in helping them make some of these decisions. It can be hard. Like you say, the executives know that we buy lots of things that never get implemented, right? And so making sure that we're communicating and being smart about that. But what is there something you'd recommend to
Yeah,
those
yeah,
folks?
Josh, thank you for that. I think that's a great question. It's one that I'm confronted with as a leader. Um, on average, based on some research that we had done, right? 75 different tools, right? That's the average CISO. And many of them have recognized that, man, this is a difficult thing to manage. And I think we're all built the same way. If you caused the outage because of a technology that was supposed to protect the company, you feel that particularly strongly, right? So we're all very cognizant of it cannot cause any disruption, cannot cause downtime. In fact, our company has been really focused on this idea of we stop downtime, right? Like this is key. So it's a piece of technology you're going to have to manage. So when your IT counterpart or somebody says, "Hey, I have a solution for you," you're reconciling this against the 75 tools you already have. What I would suggest is technology leaders interfacing with CISOs need to come up with the lowest common denominator language around risk. We have this risk in the system. There's a capability that exists to solve for that risk. Let's have a conversation about how we would do that. That CISO very likely is having a translation of the technical conversation they just had with you to a business-centric conversation with the board and the CEO. And the more you can pre-translate that message, the more effective you can meet in the middle with that person. I can't tell you how often the conversation is, I need this widget because it solves this technical thing. And then I'm left to solve for why do I need it? What risk is it reducing? So meet them, start to understand their worldview and their constituents who are not technical. I also like to walk around with this little tidbit. Um, the CISO is living in a world often of having to translate. So I'm coming from like a financial services background. My board members are 30 plus year veterans of banking. They know banking. They know financial institutions. They know interest rate risk. They know that world. They don't need to deeply understand cybersecurity. That's why they have a CISO. But I have to translate into a world view that makes sense for them this key message, these risks, these issues, what it means to revenue, what it means to partnerships, what it means to reputational risk, what it means to regulatory risk. So understand that there is an absolute reality and decision fatigue in just having to make all those translation conversations happen. The more the vendor ecosystem, the solution providers can help bridge that divide, the easier it's going to be, the more effective we can all get things done.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the wisdom and insight. This has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you sharing so much wisdom in a short amount of time. Most of all, we're thankful for the partnership. We, as a reseller of technologies, we're not in business without wonderful partners that have great technologies, and we really do care about our clients choosing the right solution that they can implement and get value out of. And so thank you for being a great partner. And we do care, and we've just want to say thank you for the partnership. Any last thoughts before we sign off here, or any questions or last things before we
No,
all sign
this
off?
is awesome. Thank you for creating this environment. I think that it's really important. I've said before, and I'll say it again, cybersecurity is a team sport. We're all in this together. Threat intelligence sharing, solution sharing, what's working for you. Hey, this worked for me. You need to be aware of it. Those kinds of things need to get out there. We all need to win together. The adversaries are many, right? It's a worldwide battlefield. We need to partner. And one last thing, look up the sixth domain of warfare. the sixth domain of warfare. It is a great thought piece by the Atlantic Council discussing the fact that the battlefield of the future is not just the five domains, air, sea, land, space, et cetera, that we've all known in cyber. It is also right here, the private sector. It's the enterprise. It's the ability to go and exploit the local bank, the water system, the local water supply, or electric producer. It's that ability to affect that can have a disproportionate global impact on strategies, on geopolitics. So look into it. It just helps you understand how the federal government and other agencies are thinking about, my God, it's critically important that we partner with CISOs and companies because they're the front lines of this new warfare.
You made me think about when a technology takes everybody offline or half the world offline in one single day, and the ripple effects. And that was a good actor with something going bad, whether it be a AWS outage or a
Yeah.
endpoint solution gone awry, update gone awry. I mean, how do you think about, and sorry to keep you on, but
No, no,
how
that's
do you
great.
think about that? Like, it wasn't warfare and it took us down. Like, what happens when it is warfare? like,
Yeah.
why isn't that
That's why
happening more often? Is that going to happen more often? Like,
I,
how do you even think about that?
I'm deeply encouraged that the conversation has shifted to recovery, to resilience, to how I'm going to take that outage. I'm going to get hit. That's why our company has been so focused. We were talking about why I joined the organization. Cyber resilience was the key message and the key focus. We've been doing the same thing. We've been fighting a good fight. I've been in this industry for a very long time, and I've done a pretty good job of protecting the organizations I've overseen. But a focus on resilience, on what happens after you get brought down to your knees, where do you go from there, and how do you get back up quickly is a conversation we all need to be having, and our company is deeply focused on that. And that's why I want to be part of that story. I want to be focused on that. I think we all need to be talking about that collectively. But yeah, I know it's an old thing in cybersecurity. It's not a matter of if, but when. But it's true. So, okay, it has happened. What are you doing? Right? How are you recovering? What mechanisms, capabilities, and processes have you put in place to help you recover quickly? Because something will happen.
Are people focused that way? To me, that's new because I'm not a cybersecurity genius. Is that shift happening, or is that something we need to be
I
proselyting?
I think we all need to be talking about it more. It's been on the books. It's been something where like, hey, as part of a good strategy, you need to focus on recover as the last thing. That's great, but are we actually better? Like if you just sample the world, are we actually better? And here's part of the reason I believe this is true, because it's not an easy conversation to have, right? If you're the CISO, you're pitching to your board, I need to make this investment to present or prevent all these bad things from happening. That's a lot easier than, hey, listen, I know you've given me these millions of dollars to invest to try and prevent all these bad things, but they're probably not going to work anyway. And I need to go spend some money on doing the right thing when it all fails. It's a hard conversation to have, but the more we can steer that conversation to say, look, even the most sophisticated enterprise is going to have a challenge. So let's put more and more energy into what we can do to prepare. And by the way, this is not something that CISOs are doing on their own. This is something that they're collaborating with their business partners on. The entirety of the enterprise needs to come together. Jaguar Land Rover, uh, you know, major headlines, right? Down for a month and a half or so, manufacturing stopped. That is not just a CISO response issue. That is a whole of company issue. And that conversation needs to start now or yesterday better for all of us, where we're focused on what can we do to be more resilient.
That is a golden idea that we need to be talking about over and over and over. And we as partners to thousand companies and clients, we need to be talking about that more, like cyber resiliency, because I think it's easier for us of prevention, but we can do a lot better talking about cyber resilience resiliency and the strategy behind that.
Yep.
Because it
And I
might
think-
come even better from us as opposed to the CISO.
Yeah.
Because, and so we have some responsibility there as well.
And I think we are seeing a little bit of movement in that direction just in the last, I would say, maybe 2 years in terms of not paying ransoms, right?
Yeah.
Like people
Yeah.
were a couple years ago, where now you're just not hearing it anymore because that conversation has shifted at least a little bit. Like you said, are we really there? No. But I think that it has started to say, you know what, we need to be prepared because however they get in, they're going to get in, and we need to be prepared to recover. At least for us, the customers we've been helping over the last probably 6 months have been way more prepared for, you know, the ransomware attacks than they were just 2 years ago. And so definitely seeing that, and something we can continue to talk more about. So thank you so much. It was awesome.
Mike, Josh, thank you again for the time. Absolutely loved it. Love to do this again. So thank you.
Thank you. We'd love that as well. We appreciate it. Have a great one.
Harold.
We appreciate
Take
you,
care.
Harold.